Hello, Tungsten Miner here. As you can see, it has become wintertime. That's one of the features of the Tough as Nails mod, which is what adds the thirst meter that you can see there, and it also makes things go from one season to the next. Of course, I've got some evergreen trees here, but if we were to look out, we can see that the other trees haven't lost their leaves, as you might expect if it were as fully realistic as possible, but that's asking a bit much probably. But you can see that they've changed colors a bit, and the grass has gotten a lot more muted and kind of gray. And my little pool of water here is frozen over, and it's snowed up here. Now remember, I'm in a forest biome. This isn't tundra or anything else that normally gets snow. So the Tough as Nails mod makes it so that it does in fact snow, even in more temperate climates, but only during the winter time. Wait a little while, spring will roll around again, and the snow will melt, trees will get green, and things will be good. If I had any crops, you'd also see that the crops would have withered and kind of died off. So you have to go take care of that each season as well. Makes the game a little more interesting, especially that you have to pay attention to the rolling around of the seasons from one to the next. But anyway, I want to talk more about what I've been doing over here. Now, last time I left off, you could see that I had gotten the foundations to ground level. Well, since then I decided actually I want them to be a little bit above ground level. So I took out all of the stuff I had done last time, all the flooring, and then moved everything up one more meter. And now I've added back in all of the same stuff I had before. So if we take a walk downstairs here, we can see, sure enough, I've got my rafters back in. I also decided that the joists weren't quite close, the rafters weren't quite close enough together. So I put them in 2 per meter, and that I think looks a lot better. And then I've got my beam across here, and then I've got my support pillars, and finally my footer. So the rest of this is all pretty much the same. It's been snowing, of course. There's a little bit of unmelted snow around. Then the interesting bit here is that I've started to fill in the walls, or frame in the walls. So I've got a 4x4, oops, maybe not quite 4x4. Yeah, I don't have the right materials, so I can show you how I do that actually. Over here is my stockpile of partially completed blocks. So I'm going to scoop up these Chisels and Bits spruce planks. I've used the Chisel mod here to change them into this one here, these large planks here. What I wanted is that bottom pattern there. You can see how it goes very smoothly all the way across, and it's very horizontally oriented. I knew I was going to be using this for doing planks and all sorts of stuff like that, so I decided to go with that. One thing I didn't do, now that I think of it, is to see if there's a similar pattern going vertically, which it does not look like there is. So yeah, I'll just stick with this. Okay, now that I've got some of these planks here, go back to Chisel, change that to connected material. And what that's going to do is anywhere there's the same material, it's going to extend it out by 1 bit. So I right-click, right-click once I've got this selected, and it adds one more layer to that. So now that's a 4x4, 4 bits by 4 bits pattern. And you can see I've got a 4-bit wide plank here that's 2 bits tall, and I did that all the way around the foundation, which again is kind of mirroring what you'd actually do with the foundation. In a real foundation, in an actual building, there would be bolts that had been dropped into the concrete when it was being poured, so that the bottom part of the bolt is buried in the concrete and the top part is sticking out, and then you can fasten these flat members here onto the concrete, so they're firmly attached. There's no great way for me to model that, and I just decided I don't need to get into that level of detail. It's going to be buried behind a wall eventually anyway, so even all of these joists are going to be buried behind a wall eventually. It's really rather ridiculous to get to that level of detail. So I just left that part out, put down the boards, and then started putting in the wall studs here, all the way going across. And then on the outside, I started adding bricks. I'll probably have more to it than just bricks eventually, but for now, to demonstrate how this works, I put in 2 bits worth of bricks, knowing that bricks are a bit thicker than most materials. So here we can see the joists carrying around, and if I jump up, we can see down in between here are hollow spaces. And then on the inside, I've added some jungle wood planks as the bottom layer here. Eventually I'm going to put in some trim around the floor there. And I've gone with a white hardened clay, but only 1 bit thick to put in the wall. And the same thing with the paneling down here. So what I've wound up with, you can see I've left this dirt block here. This is where the meter boundary comes in. So this wall still doesn't take up the entire meter. It leaves me a little gap. So when I put down tables or benches or any of my other kind of 1 meter wide devices, chests and what have you, I'm still going to have a little bit of a space between whatever that is in the wall. And that's perfectly fine with me. Gives me some options to be able to do some things. And then to make a nicer boundary between these two, I took the same spruce, yeah, there we go, spruce planks. Having trouble recognizing what I'm pointing at. Come on. Well, anyway, it is the same spruce planks. And then I put a 1x2 bit border in between so that you've got something of a nice line in between one type and the other type. Now, of course, this is going to both get taller. The ceiling I planned, I think, to be 5 meters tall here. So this is going to carry all the way up to that. And, of course, I haven't put in any windows. What I'll wind up doing with windows, though, is the same thing I've done with the framing in of the door. So here you can see is my 1 meter boundary, plus 1 bit extra on that side and another bit extra on that side, and the same thing all the way around here. So as I put in the wall surfacing, it'll take up some room and extend this 1 bit further and cover up that concrete there. And then the same deal over here. I'll put in some kind of wood trim that frames in the door, except of course I'll have to leave the 1x2 meter space for the door being just a regular Minecraft door and not aware of Chisels and Bits. And then once I've got the door in place, you can see I've added in some extra framing on both sides. That gap isn't quite the same gap. It's much more obviously narrower here than there. But that's to leave room for the door and to frame it in. That's actually a common thing to do in an actual building, is wherever you have a window or a door or some kind of opening, you'll frame that opening even if it's not following the same pitch as the rest of the studs. And in the corner, I've just got this extra little bit. And of course, I forgot to go get that piece, so maybe I'll do that now that I'm thinking about it. Right over here, and there we go. So that's the framing, at least the bottommost layer of the framing. Oh, the other thing you can see is I've extended the brick layer down, so it's sitting on top of the concrete here, and then I added a bit more to go down, because generally you only have about 8 inches clearance between the surface of the building and the space underneath, the gravel or dirt or whatever it is you've got down there, gravel in this case. And that generally leaves a little bit of the concrete of the foundation exposed to view. Now, most of the time the concrete doesn't go up a full meter. It's a little bit smaller than that. But in Minecraft, we have to make compromises to get things to work out. And it's actually quite important that the floor level here be solidly on that 1 meter boundary, so that I'm able to place down crafting tables and beds and furnaces and whatever else that might need to go in this room. So the combination of having to work within the restrictions that Minecraft has, as well as still trying to make things as realistic as possible, is kind of an interesting trading game. So next time, I'm going to carry on framing out the rest of this room all the way up to and including the ceiling, and probably the floor up above, because I want to get a sample all the way through the house, at least for one room. Anyway, getting dark here, getting cold here. Looks like I'm going to be in trouble pretty soon. So let me actually go grab my suit. So this is a wool suit made out of the same pattern that you make regular armor out of, except using wool instead of metal. And now I've got my wool suit on, so I should expect to see my temperature meter start to rise, or at least cease to fall. Hopefully, it's not that cold. It's another thing that's part of the Tough as Nails mod, is that when it gets darker, it gets colder. So, good reason to keep that sleeping bag handy. Speaking of which, let's do that now. All right, so I think that's about it for this time. Of course, if you like the video, hit that like button. If you want to see what happens next, go ahead and subscribe. And remember, we've still got room on the Quiet Countryside server, so if that interests you, just go ahead and leave a comment, and we'll get you set up. So that's all. Talk to you later.